The early morning sun draped the tarmac in a soft golden light. It was barely 8:30 a.m., but the Van Nuys private airstrip already buzzed with quiet, controlled energy. The hum of maintenance crews, the sharp bark of radios, the slow roll of black SUVs pulling up to hangars. A black BMW glided smoothly across the access lane, tires crunching lightly against the gravel patches lining the runway edges. It slowed in front of Hangar 9, where a gleaming Gulfstream G280 waited, stairs down, engines humming faintly in pre-flight prep. The driver door swung open. Darius Cole stepped out, moving with the kind of unhurried confidence that came from years of owning his own time. At 42, he wore his success lightly. A black suede jacket over a crisp dark t-shirt, fitted jeans, fresh white sneakers. Nothing flashy, nothing screaming for attention. He didn't need to. In one hand, he carried a slim black duffel. The other tucked his sunglasses casually into the collar of his shirt. His sharp, observant eyes scanned the runway automatically, already thinking ahead to his Kansas City meeting. Restructure logistics, finalize new partner terms, set Q3 goals. The mental checklist ticked across his mind as naturally as breathing. A young ramp agent nodded at him from across the tarmac. A quick, respectful acknowledgement. Darius returned with a small nod of his own. He crossed toward the stairs of the jet, footsteps steady, mind elsewhere. The jet caught the morning light just right. Sleek, efficient, built for men like him who valued time over appearances. Darius was about 3 steps from the base of the stairs when a voice sliced through the calm air behind him. "Hey, excuse me, sir." He slowed, turning slightly. A man in a sharply pressed pilot uniform strode toward him, aviator sunglasses perched low on his nose. Mid-50s, tall, lean, jaw tight like he'd already decided something about Darius before a word was even exchanged. Darius stopped politely, adjusting his grip on his bag. "Morning," he said, voice even, friendly. "Can I help you with something?" The pilot's gaze flicked over him quickly. Jacket, sneakers, casual posture, and tightened even more. "This aircraft is reserved for a private client," the man said, tone clipped. "I'll need to see ID and confirmation before you go any further." Darius blinked once, not out of surprise, just weighing the situation. It wasn't the first time he'd been stopped like this. Wouldn't be the last. He smiled lightly. "No problem. I'm Darius Cole. I believe my name's on the manifest." The pilot, his nameplate read Captain Lewis, didn't so much as glance at a clipboard or iPad. Instead, he folded his arms across his chest. "Name or no name, you're not boarding without proper verification. We've had incidents before." His voice lingered on the last word. Darius's fingers flexed slightly around the strap of his bag, but he stayed calm. "You're welcome to call dispatch. They'll clear it up," Darius said. "I'm on the flight to Kansas City." Captain Lewis tilted his head slightly, almost smiling, but not the good kind. "Right," he drawled. "And I'm flying Air Force One tomorrow." Darius exhaled through his nose. Soft, controlled. "I understand you're doing your job," he said evenly. "But you might want to make that call." Lewis didn't move, didn't reach for his radio, just stood there, blocking the stairs with his body, like a wall built out of uniforms and assumptions. From the corner of his eye, Darius noticed 2 mechanics had paused near the hangar bay, pretending to check tire pressure while sneaking glances over. Darius stayed still, sunlight warming the back of his neck, heart beating steadily. There was a choice here: escalate or stay silent. He chose silence. For now. Lewis adjusted his sunglasses and finally reached for his radio, muttering something low into it, probably calling for security. Darius set down his duffel bag at his feet and pulled out his phone calmly, scrolling to a contact labeled simply Ops Control. He pressed call. 2 rings. "Hey," he said into the receiver, voice casual, almost bored. "You might want to let your Van Nuys team know. Your CEO's being held at the stairs." He glanced up at Lewis as he spoke. Not angry, just patient. "No," Darius added, a small smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "He has no idea who he's talking to." He ended the call without waiting for a response, slid the phone back into his pocket, and folded his arms loosely across his chest, mirroring Lewis's posture. But with none of the fear, none of the desperation, just waiting, like a storm waiting on the horizon. Captain Lewis's jaw tightened as he shifted his stance, planting himself squarely in front of the jet stairs. The message was clear, "You're not getting past me." I said. Lewis repeated, voice a shade louder. "This is a private aircraft, sir. Guests are asked to wait until the owners or authorized personnel arrive." Darius adjusted the strap of his duffel casually, unbothered by the growing tension. "I heard you," he said smoothly, "but I'm not a guest." Lewis gave a short, disbelieving laugh, pushing his sunglasses up the bridge of his nose. "Sure you're not," he muttered under his breath, barely disguising the smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. "You expect me to believe that?" Darius kept his expression neutral, voice steady. "I expect you to verify it before you start making assumptions." Lewis stepped closer, squinting at Darius like he was inspecting a counterfeit bill. He didn't reach for any manifest, didn't check the system, didn't ask for a name. Instead, he leaned into his radio and pressed the call button. "Control, this is Captain Lewis at Hangar 9, he said, voice rising enough to catch the attention of several workers around the tarmac. "I've got an unidentified individual attempting to board the G280. Request immediate security presence. Possible breach." The words hung in the air like smoke. Possible breach. Darius stayed where he was, hands loose at his sides, eyes calm behind his sunglasses. He heard the sudden hush that swept over the nearby maintenance crew, felt the weighted stairs creeping up from the fuel truck. Even the line chief, halfway across the lot, had stopped pretending to check a checklist. Lewis turned back to Darius, a grim satisfaction settling on his face. "Security's on their way. You can stand over there while we sort this out," he said, pointing toward a faded yellow line near the side of the hangar. Darius didn't move. "Sir, I'm asking you nicely," Lewis added, an edge sharpening in his voice now. "Nicely's a good start," Darius said, smiling faintly. "Might want to keep that energy going." Lewis flushed, mistaking Darius's calm for insolence. "You're delaying a private flight. You know that, right?" Darius pulled out his phone without a word. He scrolled to a contact named simply Ops Control. One tap, 2 rings. "Hey," he said into the speaker, voice even. "Yeah, I'm being delayed." A pause. "No, he doesn't know." Another pause, while Lewis narrowed his eyes, suspicious but not quite catching on yet. "Yeah, I'll wait right here," Darius finished. He tucked the phone back into his jacket and returned his hands to his sides. Lewis exhaled sharply, like he'd just won some invisible argument. "You'll be escorted off property shortly," he said, voice dripping condescension. "You can explain yourself to them." Darius gave no reaction, no flinch, no change in stance. He simply watched. Lewis shifted, radio still clutched in one hand, sunglasses catching the morning glare. Nearby, a fuel tech nudged his coworker with an elbow, whispering something low. The energy around them was shifting, subtle but noticeable, curiosity mixing with unease. "Name," Lewis demanded suddenly. His voice wasn't polite anymore. It was a bark, the tone a man uses when he's trying to reassert dominance he already knows is slipping. Darius tilted his head slightly, almost like he was considering the question. "You'll know it soon enough," he said quietly. Lewis bristled, stepping back toward the security access point to wave over 2 guards now approaching briskly. Black uniforms, earpieces tucked in, faces unreadable. One of them locked eyes with Darius briefly. Something flickered there. Recognition? But they kept walking toward Lewis first. "That's him," Lewis said, jabbing a finger toward Darius. "Unauthorized attempt to board private jet. No ID. Refused compliance." The taller guard glanced back at Darius again, then leaned into his own radio. "Stand by," he said softly, stepping slightly aside. Darius stood in the same spot he'd been when this started. Not an inch closer to the jet, not an inch farther away. Still, patient. like someone waiting for a storm he already knew was coming. Lewis, on the other hand, looked triumphant for now. "You might want to get comfortable," he said, smug. "You're not going anywhere anytime soon." Darius smiled politely, slow and steady. "Neither are you," he said. Behind them, the whir of a golf cart engine echoed across the tarmac. Another senior security officer pulling up fast. And just beneath the surface, the energy on the field crackled. Something was about to shift. But Captain Lewis still didn't see it. He was too busy savoring a win that wasn't his to claim. The security SUV screeched to a halt, tires chirping slightly against the hot concrete. Two men in black polos and tactical belts stepped out fast, hands resting near their radios, scanning the scene. They moved directly toward Captain Lewis, their shoulders squared, body language clear. "Defer first to the uniform." "This the individual?" the taller one asked, nodding toward Darius without really looking at him. "Yeah," Lewis said sharply. "Attempted unauthorized boarding. No ID. Refused compliance. Might be casing the jet." The second guard, younger, slower, let his eyes linger on Darius for a half-second longer. Something in the way Darius stood, relaxed, not combative, made him pause. Darius didn't move, hands tucked casually into his pockets, face unreadable behind his sunglasses. No anger, no fear, just patience, a waiting that said he knew something they didn't. The younger guard squinted slightly, a flicker of recognition. His hand went halfway to his earpiece before he caught himself. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Sir," he said carefully, addressing Darius now. "Can I get your full name?" Darius tilted his head slightly, not unfriendly, just assessing. Then he spoke, calm, measured. "Darius Cole." The name slid across the tarmac like a dropped stone into still water. Small splash, massive ripples. The younger guard's eyebrows shot up. His mouth opened slightly, as if to say something, but he caught himself just in time. Instead, he turned slightly, whispering urgently to his partner. "Wait, that's Mr. Cole." Lewis noticed the whisper, the sudden tension, and frowned. "What's the problem?" he barked. "You got protocols. Follow them." The younger guard ignored him, tapping his radio, speaking low and fast. "Dispatch, confirm identity on scene. Name, Darius Cole. Standing by." A crackle. A pause. Then a voice came back, louder than intended. "Confirmed. CO Cole Aviation. Immediate clearance." The words punched the air out of the tarmac. Lewis blinked, taking a half-step back like he'd been slapped. His mouth opened, then closed. Darius didn't react, didn't gloat, didn't move. He just tilted his head slightly toward Lewis and said, almost casually, "You'll want to make a call upstairs." The suggestion landed like a hammer wrapped in silk. Lewis swallowed visibly, hands clenching at his sides. Across the lot, a few maintenance workers had stopped pretending to work altogether. The entire tarmac seemed to hold its breath. The taller guard coughed once, awkwardly stepping toward Lewis. "Sir," he said stiffly, "you might want to get in touch with your flight ops, right now." Lewis's jaw worked furiously, as if grinding down 1,000 unspoken excuses. But the damage was already done. The authority he thought he had was bleeding out right there on the concrete. Darius stayed still, calm, silent, letting the truth rearrange the space between them. Some lessons didn't need shouting. Some storms didn't need thunder. Sometimes the silence did all the talking. Captain Lewis stood stiffly now, shoulders squared but somehow smaller. The confidence he'd worn so casually minutes ago was leaking out fast, like a tire losing air. The younger security guard, the one who recognized Darius, had already stepped back, speaking urgently into his radio again. "Dispatch wants flight ops informed SAP, he said, not bothering to whisper anymore. "They're escalating this." Lewis gritted his teeth. "I'm handling it," he snapped. Darius watched him without expression, hands still in his pockets, stance still casual. He didn't need to push. The pressure was building all on its own. Lewis fumbled for his radio, lifting it to his mouth. Hangar 9, this is Captain Lewis, he barked. Requesting confirmation. Passenger name Darius Cole. Authorization for boarding. There was a long pause, longer than there should have been. Long enough for the few technicians across the lot to start whispering openly. Darius shifted his weight slightly, glancing up at the bright blue sky overhead. It was going to be a clear flight today. No storms, at least not the kind that showed up on a weather radar. The radio crackled. Then came the voice, sharp, urgent. Captain Lewis, immediate update. Darius Cole is cleared. Full owner access. Immediate compliance required. Lewis froze. The words seemed to hang in the air, louder than the idling jet engines behind them. He turned, looking at Darius fully for the first time, really looking. And for the first time, Lewis's face showed something Darius hadn't seen yet. Fear. Not fear of Darius as a man. Fear of who he was, of what he'd just done. Darius cocked his head slightly. You were saying? He asked, voice quiet, almost amused. Lewis licked his lips, searching for words that wouldn't come. I wasn't informed you'd be boarding personally, he stammered. We usually get a notice. Darius just looked at him. No anger, no drama, just a silence heavy enough to make the air between them vibrate. You didn't need notice, Darius said finally, his voice razor sharp but soft. You needed respect. The younger guard shifted uncomfortably at the side, eyes flicking between them. Lewis opened his mouth again, desperation creeping in now. Sir, you have to understand, we have protocols, he blurted. Security's tight. I couldn't just let. You could have verified before you judged. Darius interrupted, smooth as polished steel. Lewis swallowed hard, visibly shrinking. Before another excuse could form, another voice cut across the space. This time through the security guard's earpiece. Urgent. Sharp. The guard stepped forward, addressing Lewis. Captain, you're ordered to stand down immediately. Do not proceed with this flight. Please report to Terminal Office 2 for debrief. Lewis blinked. What? You've been relieved of duty pending investigation. The words were clinical. Icy. Final. Lewis's face turned a shade paler. He glanced at the two guards, as if expecting one of them to argue. None did. Behind him, Darius bent slowly to retrieve his duffel bag from the tarmac. He slung it over his shoulder with one easy motion, then turned back to the guards. We good? He asked, casual, almost bored. The younger guard, who looked like he wanted to both salute and apologize at the same time, nodded sharply. Good, sir. You're clear to board. Darius offered a polite nod, not a smile, and turned toward the jet stairs, walking past Captain Lewis without sparing him a second glance. Each step up the staircase was steady, unhurried, but weighted with something heavier than anger. It was history. It was dignity. It was a reminder that real power doesn't need permission and doesn't explain itself. Lewis remained standing near the hangar, radio limp in his hand, watching the man he tried to block disappear into the sky. Inside the jet, the cabin felt like another world. Cool air, soft cream leather seats, walnut paneling polished to a warm gleam. No noise except the faint hum of systems powering up. No raised voices. No tension. Darius set his duffel on the nearest seat and slid into the chair across from it, resting his forearms lightly on his knees. The silence wrapped around him. Not heavy, not empty, controlled. From the cockpit, a younger co-pilot leaned into the cabin. Good morning, Mr. Cole, he said quickly, voice respectful but not fawning. We're ready for departure at your signal. Darius nodded once. Appreciate it. The co-pilot disappeared again, leaving Darius alone with the wide view of the tarmac outside. He watched as Captain Lewis, stiff, pale, humiliated, was led toward the terminal building by the security team. No shouting, no scene, just quiet collapse. Darius leaned back into the leather seat, closing his eyes for a moment. And just like that, the flashbacks came. Flashback, a hotel lobby 10 years ago. He stood waiting near the front desk, luggage in hand, while a front clerk ignored him for 20 minutes, serving 3 other customers first. A boardroom 5 years ago. A potential investor leaned toward his assistant during a pitch meeting and asked her if she was the CEO. Right in front of him. A restaurant valet stand just last year. A manager had motioned for him to stand aside while guests arrived, assuming he was there to deliver Uber Eats. Each time, the same quiet burn. Each time, the same choice. Explode and be labeled difficult, or stay calm, stay strategic, stay building. And he did. Built when they doubted. Expanded when they ignored. Bought when they assumed he couldn't afford to rent. Let them underestimate you, his grandmother once told him. It saves you time. It lets you work. Darius opened his eyes slowly, grounding himself back in the present. The jet engines deepened their hum, preparing for taxi. He reached for his seatbelt, clicked it shut with a soft metallic snap, and leaned back, feeling the slight vibration under his shoes as the aircraft began to move. From the corner of his eye, he caught a glimpse of one of the ramp workers near the hangar, the young one who had nodded to him earlier. Now the kid stood straighter, watching the jet roll. Maybe realizing, maybe remembering. It didn't matter. Darius hadn't bought Cole Aviation for the applause. He hadn't built the company so he'd be treated differently on tarmacs. He built it so that someone else someday might walk up those stairs without being questioned first. The G280 turned toward the runway. In the distance, the morning haze shimmered over the asphalt, the blue California sky wide open above. Darius folded his hands loosely in his lap, letting the calm settle deeper. Real power, he thought, is quiet. Real power doesn't need to shout. It moves, and the world moves around it. The jet accelerated, wheels pounding lightly against the tarmac. Faster, faster. And then, with a soft, weightless lift, the earth dropped away. As they climbed into the clear, endless sky, Darius allowed himself a small smile. Not for revenge. Not for victory. But for something rarer. Freedom. By the time the jet reached cruising altitude, Darius had already received 16 missed calls. He ignored every one of them. The jet cabin was silent, save for the occasional hum of adjustment from the flight system. He reclined his seat slightly and reached for a cold bottle of water from the armrest. The first text that broke through wasn't from a contact he recognized. Unknown number. Is this you in the airport jet clip? Man, the internet is on fire. He sighed, not surprised. Someone always filmed. Another text buzzed in. Cam? Assistant. You're trending. The pilot clip has 2.3 million views. What do you want me to do? He didn't answer. Instead, he tapped open his browser. Sure enough, the video had made its rounds. A 45-second clip, shaky and slightly muffled, but clear enough. You're not authorized. This is a private aircraft, sir. And then his voice, calm, razor steady. You'll want to make a call upstairs. Darius watched it once. Just once. Not to relive it, but to confirm it. The comments were already spiraling. This right here is why calm power always wins. Man said one sentence and ended that man's career. You can hear the entitlement cracking in the pilot's voice. He set the phone down. He wasn't angry. He wasn't flattered. He was tired. Not the kind of tired sleep could cure. The kind that came after the 100th assumption. The 1,000th time someone looked at your face and decided what you could and couldn't own. He stared out the window. The sky stretched wide and uninterrupted. He'd built this company in silence. On purpose. Not for claps. Not for features. Because he'd learned a long time ago that when you walk quietly into rooms, the right people notice. And the wrong ones expose themselves. The viral clip was just a side effect. But maybe, he thought, someone out there would see it. Some young kid grinding through disrespect, biting his tongue, playing the long game. Maybe that kid would see what it looks like to stay calm, move smart, and still win. His phone buzzed again. This time it was from Maxine, his lawyer. Maxine, they're already scrambling. Statement incoming. Want to respond publicly. He stared at the message, then typed back simply, Darius, no need. The silence is loud enough. He put his phone face down. Somewhere in the distance, the first golden rays of Missouri sun began cutting through the clouds. He let the light hit his face and exhaled, Back on the ground, the walls of Cole Aviation's executive floor were buzzing, but Darius hadn't said a single word. He didn't need to. The clip was still climbing. 6 million views and counting. Mainstream news had picked it up. Private pilot confronts jet owner, then gets relieved of duty mid-tarmac. But inside the company, things moved faster than the headlines. By noon, an internal memo had gone out. Subject line: updated code of conduct, dignity, respect, and immediate enforcement. It was signed by Darius himself. No mention of the pilot. No retelling of the event. Just a quiet mandate. In every interaction, regardless of rank, title, or assumption, we lead with respect. That's not a slogan. That's policy. Starting now. No speech. No press conference. Just policy. The operations lead walked into HR at 1:17 p.m. with one directive. Effective immediately. Captain Lewis will not be returning to any flight under our command. The HR officer paused, looking up. No hearing. Do you think he would have acted that way if the man in front of him wore a name badge? The ops lead asked. Exactly. That's the problem. Elsewhere, a flight staff coordinator printed the new policy flyer and pinned it to every base wall. One of the new trainees, a young black woman, read it twice. She didn't say anything, just nodded. Back in Kansas City, Darius sat in a quiet cafe, reading through operations updates on his tablet. No security, no entourage, just coffee and quiet. A barista hesitated before walking over. Sir, sorry to interrupt. She glanced down nervously. But was that you? In the video? Darius looked up, smiled gently. It was. She smiled back, slower, more certain this time. I've never seen someone handle something like that without yelling. That meant something. He nodded once. Sometimes silence hits louder. She nodded too, like she knew exactly what he meant. That afternoon, Cole Aviation's social accounts posted a single sentence. Our values don't change with the altitude. They start on the ground. No hashtags, no PR spin, just quiet alignment. That night, Darius got a text from his assistant Cam. Cam, do you want to film a statement tomorrow? He thought for a moment, then typed back. Darius, no, I already did. He wasn't referring to the clip. He was referring to what he didn't say, and the change that followed anyway. 3 weeks later, Cole Aviation hosted its annual leadership summit. The keynote speaker hadn't been announced. No teaser emails. No backstage fanfare. But when Darius Cole walked onto the stage, the room stood before he even spoke. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't thank the crowd. He simply stepped to the center of the stage and waited. When the room settled, he looked out at the sea of uniforms, coordinators, executives, ground staff, some of whom had been there that day at Van Nuys. He didn't bring up the incident. Instead, he said, "We talk a lot about airspace, about safety, about precision. But the most important altitude we manage is how we treat people. Because respect isn't protocol. It's character." He paused. What happened wasn't about a pilot. It wasn't about race or even power. It was about assumption. And what we choose to do when that assumption is proven wrong. The room was quiet, listening. You don't have to yell to shift the ground. You don't have to fight to lead. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is the one you let the silence deliver. He nodded once. We're not just flying jets here. We're flying the next generation of respect, of accountability, of making sure nobody has to prove they belong in a room they already built. Then he stepped back. No applause cue. No dramatic exit. Just one man walking off stage exactly the way he walked onto it. Calm, clear, steady. Outside the summit, the same young security guard from the hangar stood on duty near the valet circle. When Darius stepped out, the guard straightened, gave a respectful nod. Sir, he said, I just want to say, I learned a lot that day. Darius looked at him, not as a CEO, not as a headline, just a man who'd walked the hard way. Then it wasn't a loss, he said quietly. He got into the back of a black SUV, the door closing with a soft click. As the car pulled away, the city skyline reflected in the window, Clean, clear, unmoved. And above it, the sky waited. Open, unapologetic, ready. If this story made you pause, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real-world lessons that speak louder than words.